Hi everybody, it's Katie Snyder at Museum of the Grand Prairie in the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. Well, it's Women's History Month and I want to read you a little story called Brave Girl, Clara and the Shirtwaist Makers Strike of 1909 by Michelle Market, pictures by Melisa Sweet. And this book takes place in 1909 and I'm sitting here in the exhibit that talks about women getting the right to vote, which didn't even happen until 1920. So 1909 was 11 years before that. So let's see what Clara did to change the world. A steamship pulls into the harbor carrying hundreds of immigrants and a surprise for New York City. The surprise is dirt poor, just 5 feet tall, and hardly speaks a word of English. Her name is Clara Lemlich. The girl's got grit, and she's going to prove it. Look out, New York. Clara knows in her bones what is right and what is wrong. What's wrong begins a few weeks after the Lemlichs move into their tenement in America. No one will hire Clara's father. They will, however, hire Clara. That's right, Clara. Companies are hiring thousands of immigrant girls to make blouses, coats, nightgowns, and other women's clothing. They earn only a few dollars a month, but it helps pay the food and rent. So instead of carrying books to school, many girls carry sewing machines to work. Clara becomes a garment worker. From dawn to dusk, she's locked up in a factory. Rows and rows of young women bend over their tables, stitching collars, sleeves, and cuffs as fast as they can. Hurry up, the bosses yell. Rat-a-tat-tat, hisses Clara's machine. The sunless room is stuffy from all the bodies crammed inside. There are 2 filthy toilets, 1 sink, and 3 towels for 300 girls to share. Clara learns the rules. If you're a few minutes late, you lose half a day's pay. If you prick your finger and bleed on the cloth, you're fined. If it happens a second time, you're fired. The doors are locked and you're inspected every night before you leave to be sure you haven't stolen anything from the factory. But Clara is uncrushable. She wants to read, she wants to learn. At the end of her shift, though her eyes are hurt from straining in the gaslight and her back hurts from hunching over the sewing machine, she walks to the library. She fills her empty stomach with a single glass of milk and goes to school at night. When she gets home in the late evening, she sleeps only a few hours before rising again. As the weeks grind by, Clara makes friends with the other factory girls. At lunch, they share stories and secrets as if they were in school where they belong. Clara smolders with anger, not just for herself, but for all the factory girls working. This was not the America she imagined. The men at the factory tell her they've been trying to get the workers to team up for a union. Then they'd strike, refuse to work unless the bosses treat them better. But the men don't think the ladies are tough enough. Not tough enough? Because they're girls? Oh, yes, they are. Clara knows it. She'll show them. From then on, at the sewing tables and on the street corners, Clara urges the girls to fight for their rights. When the seamstresses are overworked, she says, strike. When they are underpaid, she says, strike. When they are punished for speaking up, she cries, strike. And the girls do. Yeah, they do. They're tough enough. Each time Clara leads a walkout, the bosses fire her. Each time she pickets, her life is in danger. The bosses hire men to beat her and the other strikers. The police arrest her 17 times. They break 6 of her ribs, but they can't break her spirit. It is shatterproof. Clara hides her bruises from her parents. A few days later, she's on the picket line again, and the other girls think if she can do it, we can do it too. For weeks, the small strikes go on, but the bosses find other young women to do the work for the same low pay and the same long hours. We must do something bigger, thinks Clara and the other union leaders. Something huge, a giant strike at every garment factory in the city. The union holds a meeting. Throngs of workers pack the seats, the aisles, the walls, the halls thrum with excitement. Clara listens to speech after speech. The speakers, mostly men, want everyone to be careful. 2 hours pass. No one recommends a general strike. Finally, the most powerful union leader in the country goes up to the podium. Not even he proposes action. So, Clara does. That's right, Clara. She calls out from the front of the hall. The crowds lift her to the stage where she shouts in Yiddish, "I have no further patience for talk. I move that we go on a general strike." And she starts the largest walkout of women workers in U.S. history. So Clara spoke Yiddish. Clara was Jewish. The next morning, New York City is stunned by the sight of thousands of young women streaming from the factories. One newspaper calls it an army. Others call it a revolt. It's a revolt of girls, for some are only 12 years old, and the rest are barely out of their teens. In the coming weeks, Clara is called a hero. She lights up chilly union halls with her fiery pep talks. Her singing lifts the spirits of the picketers. When a group of thugs approach, she yells, "Stand fast, girls." So the bosses sent people to break up the picket lines. And they do. All winter long in the bitter cold, in their cheap, thin coats, tired and starving and scared, the girls walk alongside the men on the icy sidewalks of the picket line. They spill out of the union halls, blocking the roads, filling street corners and public squares. Newspapers write stories about them. College girls raise money for them. Rich women swathed in fur coats picket with the factory girls. By the time the strike is over, hundreds of bosses agree to let their staffs form unions. They shorten the work week and raise salaries. The strike emboldens thousands of women to walk out of garment factories in Philadelphia and Chicago. So it started in New York, it moved to Philadelphia and Chicago. And the strike convinces Clara to keep fighting for the rights of workers. Her throat is hoarse, her feet are sore, but she has helped thousands of people, proving that in America, wrongs can be righted. Warriors can wear skirts and shirts and blouses, and the bravest hearts may beat in girls only 5 feet tall. So this book talks about how there were abuses in the garment industry. Bosses shaved off time from lunch hours. They set clocks back at the end of the workday to fool the workers. They made them work long hours, including illegal evening work for little money, forced them to pay for cloths soiled with blood or spilled food, and fired them at will. Some factories hired girls as young as 6 years old to cut threads and garments. So then they had the strike, right, in 1909. When the strike ended, 339 waist and dress manufacturing firms allowed workers to form unions. They shortened their work week. They increased their hourly wage. Some companies refused to negotiate, notably the Triangle Waist Factory, where the following year, hazardous conditions led to a fire that claimed 146 lives. So remember when in the book it said that the doors would be locked during the work day? That happened at the Triangle Waist Factory, and there was a fire. And the workers, a lot of them young women, a lot of young immigrant women, could not get out. The tragedy raised public awareness even further about the evils of the garment industry's practices. Clara Lemlich, then in her early 20s, investigated the health and safety conditions in the garment district for the union. After the strike, thousands of workers in Philadelphia, as well as Chicago, Cleveland, Kalamazoo, struck for better working conditions or campaigned for the right to organize unions. So, though there are still wrongs to be righted today, today's workers have a 5-day work week. Now, some of this is because of people like Clara, because of unions. They have a 5-day work week instead of a 7-1 or a 6-1. They have overtime pay and other protections due in part to labor leaders like Clara Lemlich and thousands of brave girls who picketed in the winter of 1909. So that's an everyday girl, everyday woman like you and I, Clara Lemlich, who did some extraordinary things along with her fellow workers in 1909. And we still have better working conditions today because of people like Clara. Okay, thanks. See you later. Bye-bye.